All right, welcome everybody. This is going to be section 6 of coding live in Python. Today we're going to be going over higher order functions. So now we're starting to go a little bit more in the weeds of Python and algorithms, and we're going to start talking about creating functions inside of functions or passing functions into a function as a parameter. So here's an example. Functions that operate on other functions, either by taking them as arguments or by returning them, are called higher order functions. So here we have a function of adding, right? It just takes two inputs, 1 and 2, adds them together, and it returns the answer. And I believe this is JavaScript, so I apologize. I'll make sure that it gets changed over to Python. And let's actually do these examples ourselves so that we don't have to see it. Okay. Let's move over here. All right. So we got a function of adding. It takes num1 and it takes num2. Now this function is just simply going to return. Let's just make an extra variable, an answer of num1 plus num2. Okay, it's going to return the answer. All right. Now let's say that I have, let's go look at the next example. We have a multiply and we even have a calculate. Okay, so let's say we have a multiply, right? Df mult, and we take num1 and num2. Let's make an answer, make that equal to num1 times num2. And let's say that the reason why I'm creating these functions here is to figure out if the sum of two numbers is bigger than the multiplication of two numbers. So now what I can do is say is add or mult greater. This is going to take in a couple of parameters. It's going to take in num1. It'll take in num2. It's going to take in an addition function and a multiplication function. And now I can call both of those from inside of my body. So what I can say is, if add num1, num2 is greater than mult num1 and num2, then I wanted to return adding is greater. Else return multiplying is greater. So notice how Python was able to recognize that these are supposed to be functions, all right? Now when I go to call my function of is adding or is add or multiplying greater, I can pass 1 and 2. And then I need to pass the add function and the mult function. And let's see what that gives us. Oh. I should probably print that. I apologize. And now we see adding is greater, right? Because 1 plus 2 is 3, and 1 times 2 is 2. So it shows us that adding is greater. But let's say that I just wanted to do, I wanted to know if I knew that I was going to do one or the other type of of operations, I can just pass calculate. I can pass calculate, and instead what I can do is return calculate with num1 and num2 inside of it, right? So if I go to send the adding function into calculate, what do you guys think we'll see?
Three.
Yeah, we'll see 3 because I'm passing add. So it takes this calculate as an adding. So calculate now represents the add function. It takes in 1 and 2 as its parameters and returns 3 as the
I have
answer.
a question.
Go ahead.
So the add and the mult that we have in line 2 and 6, is it because we've defined those functions? Is that why we're able to use them in line 10? If we don't have those two up there, are we still be able to do add in line 13?
So we don't use add or molt in line 10, and technically we don't use it on line 11. Where we use add or molt is here on line 13, where we pass that function as a parameter.
Correct.
Yes. So it's because we defined them before, right? Because if I were to move add
Okay.
to the bottom of this, it's going to tell me that it doesn't exist. It's an undefined function because at this point in my program, it doesn't exist. It's nowhere to be found. So I need to ensure that it comes before. Does
Yeah,
that
that was my question. Yeah,
okay?
that's my question.
Yeah. So if I pass 1 and 2 and I pass add, it returns 3. So now I wonder what happens if I pass molt. What do you guys think we'll see in this case?
2.
Yeah, we'll see 2. So we run it, and now we have the number 2. Awesome. Let's continue on with this. Yeah, so in this case, when arithmetic, this is what I just demonstrated. We passed a function as an argument, so it was able to return the number of 2 plus 3. And if we were to switch it for multiply, then it would return 6. Now, here's another thing I could do, right? I could, because this already exists inside of my program, I could say df determine which action is higher, and then it can take num1, num2, and then take in the calculator, right? And let's make this calc as well.
That function would only be able to be used within that function, right? Because it's local.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
exactly what I was gonna get to. Thank you.
Oh, my my bad.
No, no problem at all. Yeah, so we have our calc, and let's name it calc 1 and calc 2. All right, so this takes calc 1 and calc 2. Oh, hello. I can spell, I promise. Okay, and now what it's going to do is if calc 1, num1, and num2 is greater than calc 1, or in this case, calc 2, num1 and num2, then I want to return calc 1. Else, I'm going to return calc 2. So now I can say operation is equal to determine which number is higher, which action is higher. Pass in all of those arguments. And now operation is going to return a function. Once it returns the function, then I can return operation with num1 and num2. So there's quite a bit of nesting in here. So let's see. Let's make sure that we know what's going on, right? So we have is adding or subtracting, and it takes in two functions. So let's make adding and multiplying. So in this case, num1 is, let's switch these numbers as well. Let's make it 5 and 5. And let's not make it 5, let's make it 7. Okay, so we got num1 is 5, num2 is 7. Our first calculation is adding, and our second calculation is multiplying. Those are the same parameters that get sent to this function, right? So now calc1, which is adding, is going to say is 5 plus 7 greater than, and then I got my multiplication of 5 times 7, which will be 35. So if it's greater, it's going to return adding. Otherwise, it'll return multiplication. So in this case, we should see returning it multiplication. Right? So now operation is going to hold the value of the function of multiplication. And when we run this through, it will then call the multiplication function and return 35. And we see it happening here. And I could even draw it out if that might be a little bit more helpful for visualization. Would you guys like to see that? Or does everybody have a pretty good grasp on this?
No, draw it out.
Draw it out? Awesome. Oh, here's our drawing from last time. Do you guys want this drawing?
That would be nice if it could get sent out.
Okay, let me. Okay. Awesome. So we have one function. And it's hard to make a diamond in this thing. Okay, so we have one function. And this one's going to be adding 1 let's say n1 plus n2, which we know is a number. And let me just, we have our second function, which will be multiplying, which will take and multiply number 1 times number 2. Then we have a function, a bigger function, that takes in, so it might be better if I just do this one this way. So this function takes in add, it takes in mult, and then it takes in two numbers, which is n1 and n2. Okay. So now let's try to put our parameters in here, and let me try to find a better way. I'll do it inside of a nice little rectangular box. Let's put it up here. Okay, so those are the parameters that make up this function. And inside of this function, we have another function living in there that will determine which one of these are bigger. Oh. Okay. So when we initiate, the one that we're working with is here, right? This very outside function is the one we're working with. And when we pass in our parameters, in our case, we passed in where n1 was equal to 5, n2 was equal to 7. We passed where calc1 was equal to add, and calc2 was equal to multiply. Okay. So we initiate the great function, the bigger function, and we pass those same exact parameters to our smaller function living inside. And what this function does is it takes in both of these, it gives them 1 and 2, and it figures out which one would return a higher number. So in this case, we know that adding would return 12. And we know that multiplying would return 35. And this function just literally runs a comparison between add is greater than 25. I mean, then multiply. This just returns the biggest one out of the two. So which one out of these two is bigger?
35.
Yeah, so we get 35 returned back. So the function that gets returned is 35. And after we get the function returned of 35, then we run number 1 and number 2 into multiply and get 35 as a result. Right, so we see is greater than. That's our big function here. Takes in those 4 parameters. And then we pass it to determine which one is higher, which also takes in the same exact 4 parameters. So now we see it taking in the same exact 4 parameters here. And let me try to bring those a little closer here. Yeah, so now we see it take in those same exact 4 parameters. And it says, hey, is 12 greater than 35? Okay, it isn't. So I'm going to return the function of multiply. So here, when I assign it to a variable, operation is now equal to what?
So the greater one is 35, but so line 9 and line 11, which part of the function are they looking at? Line 9 and 11.
Line 9 and 11. What's the question about them?
So which part of the function, which are they looking at the 2 functions that was defined earlier, the add and the mult, Or that is just a declaration for the first one, then the second one is looking at the outer one.
So when we call the actual function here on line 21, calc 1 and calc 2 is just add and multiply. So that's what's being passed there. And then the same arguments that are being passed into line 9 are being passed into line 11. Does that make sense?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why on line 17? Why
Uh-huh.
why does calculate 2 come first on then calculate 1?
I'm passing multiplication in front of addition, right? Because
Yeah.
it doesn't matter in which order I put them, because what I'm asking is which one is bigger. So it's going to return the same thing both times. So calc 1 and calc 2 here is in reference to line 9. And then calc 1 and calc 2 in line 12 is in reference to line 11, because they're separate functions, right? So I could separate this and place it down here, and this function would exist on its own. All right, so if I comment all of this out and I go and I print determine, okay. Now say determine which action is higher, and I pass in 5 and 7, and then I say calc 1. Oh, sorry. And then I pass in addition and multiplication. And I run this, it's going to return to me a function of multiplication. Right?
Mhm.
So now, if I go and I uncover this, and let's say I bring this back. And go ahead.
Sure.
What is it, Akeem?
So on line 20, if calc num 1, num 2, and calc 2, so those are just referencing the add and mult to do calc 1 add and calc 2 mult from line 25.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So now if I go here and I pass in calc 1, in this case, calc 1 would be addition. All right, so we see addition being printed from this print statement. And we see multiplication being printed from this print statement. All right. So now let's say that I go ahead and do calc 2 instead. Calc 2 will now be multiplication. Right. So now if I pass these.
Quick one.
Go ahead.
Why is addition being passed in for the return on line 9? Because we're not doing any comparison. So when you did calc 1, return calc 1 and a yeah, why was addition returned?
Well, I'm returning calc 1, right? So
okay, speaking of addition, okay.
Yeah, so in line 17, we see that it's calc 1. Right? So now we see that add statement. So now if we know that that's calc 1 and calc 2, so let's grab this. Let's bring it back in here. And let's name it something different. Let's go with, oh, that ain't it. Let's go with N1. Oh. Here, let's go with N2. And then here, let's go with action. So now we got action 1, action 2. Oh, gotta switch these as well. Action 1, action 2, right? And when I go to call this operation, and I'm setting this variable, I'm saying, hey, determine which action is higher. And I'm passing num1. What is num1 in reference to? Where am I getting num1 from?
From the outer is add mod greater.
Say again?
Is yeah, the first one, line 9.
Okay, so I'm grabbing num1 from line 9. Okay. And when I call this function, which one of these arguments is num1?
Yeah, 5.
5. Perfect. So then num2 is 7.
7.
Action 1 is add, or sorry, calc 1 in this case, not action, because action 1 doesn't exist just yet. So now we have calc 1, which is add, and then calc 2 coming from here, which is multiply, right? So now we got those numbers are called N1, N2, action 1, action 2. So what is action 1?
The result from adding.
All right, so action 1 is addition, meaning that action 2 is our multiplication, right? And then I'm just returning that to operation. So let's just print.
What exactly is that line 17 doing?
Line 17 is giving the return value, is making the return value to a variable. So right now when I run this and I print operation, I'll see molt as my function.
Line 17 would be essentially the same thing as 3, right? Like line 3, you're just creating or line 2, you're just creating an answer variable. Is that right?
Yeah, basically, I'm just creating an answer variable where it would be taking in what I'm returning, right?
Okay. Mhm.
So like, for
It's
example, I could say again.
Sorry. So is an action 1 calculate 1? Action 2 calculation 2?
Right. That's correct. Yeah, so action 1 in this case will be calculate 1, and then action 2 will be calculate 2. And then when we call that function on line 24, we're telling line 11 that calc 1 is add and calc 2 is multiply, because this is where I'm calling the function, giving it its arguments. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so when I print operation, we see that it returns multiplication, right? It's giving it the value of a function. And now I can say that what I want to do is return operation. And I can't use N1 and N2 because N1 and N2 don't exist in this function, right? What function does N1 and N2 exist in?
Determine which action.
Yeah, they only exist in the scope of line 13 through 17. So what do I have to call it here?
Num1, num2.
Yeah, num1 and num2. And now when I go, oh, I forgot an E here. Now when I go to call it, it returns to me the number of 35. So the function that was returned, so here we determine which function we're going to use, and it returns multiplication. So that's from this print statement in operation. And then we could use operation to multiply the two numbers and get 35. it's just nesting different logic inside of one function. And this is really useful, especially once you're dealing with larger algorithms. Of course, this doesn't seem like it's very useful because we're doing something as simple as adding and multiplying. But even with just adding and multiplying, we could see how difficult it gets to read, right? And just follow the thread, because that's all it is. We're just pulling the thread and seeing where it goes. So 5 is here, goes to num1, goes to n1, which then goes here on action 1 and action 2. Okay, that's great. So now we got 7, goes up here, goes here, comes here, and then we see it bounce off into both of these functions, and so on, right? We just see all of these, we just see these attributes being passed into different functions and being utilized to determine the logic that we want to do. Does anyone have any questions over this? Okay, awesome. Let's take a 10-minute break and then come back and go straight into the exercises for today. And let me just make sure that everyone has the exercises for today. Oh, let me stop sharing. Okay, everything is up and I will pass it here in the chat. Okay, so in the chat, you have the link to the challenges just in case you don't have them, and then we'll pull them up and work to them together this evening. I'll see you all at 6:55. I was on mute. Welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone is there. Let's get into this. First exercise, here we go. And
Can I share and show you something real quick?
yeah, of course. Let me stop sharing.
It's from yesterday. Let me know when you can see my screen.
I'm so sorry, King. Let me move this over real quick. Okay, what is this one? Repeated characters. List of characters, list of occurrences, dictionary list, and dictionary values. Okay, what's the error that you're getting?
It's saying my multiplication, it's not, for some reason, it's, I don't know. Internet is messing up. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I could hear you. I think it's
Okay.
because I think it's because you're trying to multiply a list times a list.
Forgotten how we did this yesterday.
So what we did yesterday was we
Do I have to
appended.
turn that?
Go ahead.
Do I have to turn this into convert it from list to be able to multiply?
No, so the problem is that you're multiplying a list times a list, and you can't do that. You would have to access each individual index of this list to be able to multiply.
Okay. I'll stop sharing. I'll watch the video once you post it.
Okay. Yeah, and then after we finish all of them, we could always come back and do this one because we only have like 6 or 5 problems today. So we should have enough time to come back and do this one.
Gotcha. Thank you.
No problem. All right. Let's do this. Okay. Where did my little video icon go? Video. Oh, there you go. Okay. And then we need the chat. Let's fork this real quick. Start the recording. Oh, the recording has been going on this whole time. I apologize. All right, let's go. So we got write a function that takes in an array of letters represented by grades for each semester. So A plus, C minus, etc., and return the cumulative GPA for the semester. So we see that the A plus is equal to a 4.3, depending on each individual grades. Okay, this seems fairly simple. What does this look like to you guys? Does this remind you of any type of data structure?
Dictionary.
Yeah, it's a dictionary, right? So let's see. Let's try turning that into a dictionary inside of our function. So let's go with Command B. Oh boy. All right, and let's turn all of these into colons. Oh, I missed one. Oh well.
How do you do that?
You highlight what it is that you want to multiply or replicate, and then you press Command D as in Delta, and then the more you press D, the more of it highlights.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah, of course, no problem. Okay, and let's go over one. We want that to be a string. Okay. So then this last one should be like this. And then we just want that. All
I'm
right.
sorry. I missed it. He asked you how did you do what?
Oh, how did I highlight all of them and like replace it? So for example, I have this colon, right? And you see how all of
Mhm.
these highlight themselves?
Mhm.
If I press Command or Control, if you're on a Windows, and then D as in Delta, and I just keep pressing it, you see how it starts throwing in multiple cursors throughout the program? Yeah, that's what he was asking about. So we have that. Okay. Looks good. So let's make this grades. And less. And now if we uncomment it, beautiful. I think. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so now we got our list of grades and we have their corresponding value. So what's next? I want to make sure that all of them, I want to get the total sum of grades when added together, right? So how do I do that? I want my GPA. What is a GPA?
Won't it just be the mean of all the values?
Yeah, I could probably import mean. But what do you mean by all the values? Because as of right now,
So
all I have is my dictionary, right?
All the numerical values.
Okay. So what about, how am I gonna get those?
we can do grades, then dot values.
Okay. So grade values. And what type of data structure is that gonna be? Or are you saying grades dot values as in all the list of values in the dictionary?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's not answering our question, right? Because what I want to do is I want to be able to interpret each one of these letter grades, grab one of these values. I want to then calculate my GPA from these values, right?
Well, we can pretty much do the same thing that we just saw in the earlier example.
Okay.
So get the index of each key, then to get the value from there from their indexes.
Okay. So you're saying to do a for loop. Right? And then get the value of the indexes. But what is going on here? Replit is out of sync. Okay, awesome. So I got my 4i and list of grades, and then you're saying that I want to access each key. So let's say print grades index I, right? So this should give me each value, right?
Okay.
Was that what you were saying?
Well, I was thinking more in line of range and length. Again, so have the index of each position to get the value.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is actually doing what you were saying, because technically we can't access the dictionary by an index, right? We would have to grab the key and then access the value by each individual key.
Yeah. This is actually, yep.
Okay, great. So now I see each value and what it's worth. So I got C plus and it's worth 2.33, B plus 3.33, etc. But what do I do with this information? Because it's still not telling me I don't have my GPA, right? Currently, all I'm doing is looping through it and finding out what values correspond to each letter.
So now since we have the the values, so we can add all those values and find the mean, and the mean, whichever it corresponds to. So we can do like a condition if the mean of this list is so then to get the value, to get the key from there. I know that makes sense.
Okay, so you're saying let's break that down. You're saying to add all of these values together, right?
Yeah.
How do I do that?
Hmm.
Could you use the sum method? But I wouldn't know how to get just or could you do grades I plus equals grades I?
Well, that would be doing variable reassignment, right? Because then that means I'm just telling by the end of it, C will be worth a sum of all of these numbers
Yeah.
prior to it. So we have this grade values here. What do you guys think we should do with that?
List, turn to a list.
Okay, so let's turn into a list. So now I have a list without anything. So what do you guys want to do? What do you guys want to put inside of this list?
Append grade.I into a list, into a grade.value.
Okay. So grade values dot append grade I. And let's print grade values right after that. Okay, so now I have a list of all of the values. So now I think Andrew brought up using sum, right? So I could probably use sum. Let's see.
Is there a function that does calculate mean or no?
I could import the library of mean and do it that way, but I think there's a different way of doing this, right? Because what is the mean?
The total number.
Oh, sorry.
Right.
Sum divided by count.
Yeah, just the sum of all numbers divided by the length of all numbers, right? So here I could probably divide the sum by something. What do you guys think we should divide it by?
Len.
Grade value.
Yeah. The LEN of grade values. So let's see what that looks like. So this gives us 3.132, which matches there, 3.132. Okay. So that one seems like it's gonna work. Let's check our second scenario. We got 2.866 and it is 2.866, but it's still sending me false. Do you guys know what I'm doing wrong? Why it's sending me false?
Return.
Oh, I gotta return. Nice. So then I just return. And there it is. True and true.
So what if the question asks us to pick which of the GPAs, let's say the 3.132 belongs to B plus. if you want to show B plus, I don't, never mind. I think it's not part of the value. So I was looking at if that matches one of the values to list both the key and the value. But sorry.
I see. Okay. Awesome. All right, let's pull up the next one. Let's see that. We got the card trip coming up next. Well, actually, before we move on, does everybody understand this? Even better, we could probably refactor this, right? So currently, I'm pushing everything into an array and then grabbing the sum of that array. Is there a way that I could maybe not have to grab the sum here and just have grades of values be equal to the sum as already? All right, so if grade values was 0, what can I do here so that I don't have to do sum anymore?
You could
Add them.
plus, yeah, plus equal the grades. Would it be I? Is that?
Yeah, so I could plus equal grades I. And then when I run this, it should still return true. Oh, hello. Let's see. Grade values and my GPA, LEN of, LEN of grade values doesn't exist. Okay, so if LEN of grade values doesn't exist anymore, what other LEN can I use?
Of grades. No.
What am I iterating
List,
through
yeah.
here? Oh, through the list of grades. Okay. And let's run that. And there you go. True and true. So now the question is, why is this more efficient than what we had before?
Then what?
So before we were using an array, I mean a list, and then
Yeah.
summing that list. Why is this more efficient than what we had before?
Because this reduced the amount of steps that you got to take.
Right. It reduces the amount of steps that I have to take, and it reduces the amount of times my program has to conduct for loops, right? Because sum under the hood is just running a loop, and it's doing exactly what we're telling it to do here. It's adding each number together and then returning that total value. So now instead of running this for loop and then running sum to have another for loop, I'm just grabbing it all at once here. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Awesome. Let's move on to the car trip. Oh, oh. Ooh, okay. So the car trip looks like we're supposed to work with dictionaries. And let's see. Write a function that takes in a car object in the form of people. So we got people, miles, and we got spare tires used. Okay, and a number of miles driven as an integer. Okay, so this is the input, number of miles driven as an integer. All right. So now it says update the car object to include the new amount of miles. So 1500 plus 5500, that puts us at 70. Okay, so that's great. Additionally, the road is very rocky, so you'll need to use an additional spare tire every 1000 miles. So that's 5 spare tires. So we see that change. So it went from 0 to 5. Okay. And then update the car object to reflect this. Okay, great. So it doesn't look like we have to worry about anything that has to do with people. That's just noise. So we could just disregard it. The only thing we have to worry about is summing the amount of new miles into our dictionary, and then finding out how many tires we went through. Okay, great. How could we do that?
I'm trying to make sense of the question. It's kind of
Yeah, so in the question, let's break down the question. What is it really asking, right? So let's see. Let's erase this. Okay, so what is the question really asking? Let's try to figure that out. Okay, so the question is, it wants us to take any dictionary. And let's just see the dictionary here. So we got people. That's supposed to be a list of people. And let's make this a little bigger. Can I make it a little bigger? It's not gonna let me. Okay, let's try to use a square instead. So we got people. That's supposed to be a list of people. And for now, let's just make it a list. And then function takes in car object. In the form of people, we got miles. And what type of data type is miles?
Integer.
Okay, which is supposed to be an integer. And then we got spare tires. And what type of data type is that? What data type is that? Right, an integer. So this is our object. Nothing too fancy. And then other than that, we're supposed to take in the amount of miles driven. And driven is what we have to reflect as a result to our dictionary. Right? So now it's asking us, hey, let's see. It's saying every 1,000 miles, you will use a spare. What else is it saying? Right, so it says takes in a number of miles driven as an integer. Update the car object to include the new amount of miles on the odometer. So right now on line 15, miles is 1,500. And then we see that miles is 7,000 here because it was increased by 55, right? Is that right?
Yes.
So let's go with increase odometer mileage. Okay, so that's what it's asking me to do. So if the input is 5,500 miles, how many spare tires am I going to use?
5.
Right, so we got spare. It's going to be 5. And how did you get 5?
Because it's every
You
1,000 miles.
you those double slash. What's that called? Double slash 1,000.
Double slash. What does double slash do?
It gets result is
the
5.
the whole number without remainder.
Okay, great. So now we got divided by 1000, and that gives us our 5. Awesome. And then we got miles, or the odometer, right, which is represented by miles. What's that going to turn into?
Seven.
Yeah, it's going to turn into 7,000. And how do we get that?
That was already given, right? The miles, 7,000.
No, that wasn't given. It's because we got 1,500 here, right? And since we have 1,500 there, we add the 5,500. And that then allows us to create our new dictionary.
Update the dictionary.
Right, we update the dictionary. And now where the miles will be 7,000. The spare tires will be 5. And we don't have to worry about the miles driven. Okay, so this is all we have to do. Right, so boom, boom. And there we determine how many tires are used and determine what the new mileage becomes. Okay, and then return new car dictionary. Okay, so that's what it's asking. That's all we need to do. So now let's put that into code. How do we do that?
Create a dictionary first.
Well, the dictionary is already giving it to us. It's the car object, so we already have that, right? So if we already, so let's say I print car object, and let's just call it dictionary. Let's get rid of this pass.
Couldn't we
Okay.
just access those, what we actually need to alter without looping or anything through this one?
Yeah, we definitely could. So we already see the dictionary there. Let me run this again so that it doesn't look so bad. We already see the dictionary. And it has everything we need. So just like you said, we could just access the dictionary and update it, right? So how could we do that?
Index.
Okay, so let's go for miles first. How do I get into miles?
The name of the dictionary, got that, then the mouse,
One.
then mouse, it's people, then mouse? No, mouse,
Yes.
it's mouse.
Awesome. Okay, so now we see the miles is 1,500 currently, but that's not what we want, right? We want to update it. So
Assign it.
yeah, that's great. So we could do assignment, or we could, so how could we do that? Do we want plus equals, or do we just want equals?
Equals 5,000.
Right, because in the
Plus.
end yeah, so we're gonna do plus equals because we're just adding, right? If we look at our notes over here, we said that all we wanted to do was grab the original 1,500 that's being passed and add the 55. So let's do that. Plus equals, and then what am I adding here?
So there is 1,500 before, so 550, 500.
Okay. Do I want to put 555 here, or is there a variable that I could use to reference that second argument?
The miles driven.
Yeah,
Mhm.
4 miles driven. Okay, great. Let's see if that works. Awesome. So now we see 7,000. Nice. So we updated one. So now let's update the spare tires. So I want to take a look at the spare tires. So I need to change this key. What do I change this key to?
Spare tire.
Spare tire.
Is it just spare tire?
I think.
Spare.
Give you guys the answer. Spare tire is used.
I'm sorry. I have a very simple question.
Yeah, of course.
Can you access those by index or you just by the name? Can
No,
you put an index in a dictionary?
No, you can't put an index in a dictionary. So I can't say like 2. Right? If I run this, it's gonna tell me that doesn't exist.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have to access dictionaries by key. Awesome. So now we see that it's currently 0, but that's not what we want. So again, we have to use variable reassignment, right? So what do I do here? Right, so we got this part done of the miles, but now we got the second part where we want to make sure that the spare gets updated to 5 because we could run this math calculation there. So how could I do that?
Equals to
mile
miles driven divided by
floor division 1,000.
Or division by 1,000. That's awesome. Okay. Oh no, it won't let me indent it anymore. Let me see if I could collapse this. There you go. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. Nice. So now we have 5. And now instead of printing just each individual key, let's see what our dictionary looks like once we updated everything. So now miles has 7,000 and our spare tires used is 5, which is just what we wanted, right? And we don't have to worry about people because currently the people is just noise, it's just an extra key. Okay, great. I'm still getting false. Why am I getting false?
Because we're not returning anything.
Awesome. So now I go over and I return. And now when I run this, we should see true. Nice. Easy peasy. Let's go to the next one. Or actually, before we move on to the next one, does anyone have any questions on this? Okay, let's go to the next one. Current grade. Let's do this. And then this is all recorded, so you guys will have access to the video. Boom. Okay, there you go. All right, so current grade. Write a method that takes in a student object with attributes, GPA as a number. Okay, so we see here, it takes in the GPA and it gives us GPA as a number. A grade level is a number, so grade, and then what grade they're currently in. As well as an integer representing the change in their GPA. Okay, and here's our second argument, which is the GPA change. In this method, so this method should update the student's GPA to include the change and increase their grade a level by 1 year, and then should return the updated object. Okay. Awesome. So actually, let's see if we can bring back what we have. Okay, great. So now we have a different object. And now in this case, the first one is grade. And what's the data type of grade?
Number.
And so we got our integer. And then what's the data type of the GPA?
Integer.
It's actually a float, right?
Oh.
And now we got our float, and then our second argument is our GPA change. And what data type is our GPA change?
A float as well.
Nice, it's a float. Okay, great. So now, what are the requirements of this? They didn't really give us any requirements. All that we have to do is,
Increase the
yeah, so we have to increase the year, right? Okay, so increase the grade by 1. And what else do we have to do?
and should return. Can't see what's there.
Well, before we return anything, because that's yeah, we have to change the GPA, right? So change the GPA by GPA change. Awesome. So currently, in the example that we have, grade is equal to what? All right, so right now, if I look at the key, we have grade. This is 10. So if I'm following the requirements, what is grade going to be at the end?
So increase the change GPA, increase the grade by 1. So it's gonna be 11.
Perfect. Yeah. So it's 11. And now that I have 11, I also want to change the GPA, right? So in this case, our GPA was our GPA change is 0.3, and our GPA is 2.5. So what should it be at the end?
2.8.
Yeah, it should be 2.8. Okay, so how do we get grade? So we got 10 plus 1, because the original grade was 10, and we added 1. And how do we get 2.8?
2.5 plus the change of 0.2.
Okay. And then what we're returning is return new or updated student, which in this case, our student now, his grade is going to be what?
11.
11. And his GPA will be what?
2.8.
Okay, great. So now we know what the question is asking me. I know what I'm supposed to do in the body of my function. And I know what my function is supposed to return. Awesome. So now I have those 3 things going on.
Good question. Quick question.
Mhm.
So when the question says this method should update the student's GPA to include the change and they increase their grade level by 1 year. So that means just increase it by 1. The 1 year means 1.
Yes.
Okay, that would have been. I wouldn't be able to think about that if I'm looking at it by myself.
Okay. Awesome. So now let's get into the nitty-gritty of this, right? So just like before, I can just print my student object. And instead of object, let's call this dictionary real quick. Oh, hello. And let's run this. Okay. And I'm actually going to comment out our second test so that it doesn't get in the way. All right, so I got my grade, which is 10, and my GPA of 2.5. So how could I access the grade on its own?
Student object with grade.
Awesome. Okay, awesome. So now I'm grabbing the student object, the student dictionary with just the grade. But I'm not changing it currently, and I'm supposed to change it by 1. So how could I do that here?
Add 1.
Plus equal 1.
Awesome. So plus equal 1. I run it, and now we see that we have 11. Okay, great. So now our next target is going to be the GPA. How do I access the GPA?
Dictionary GPA.
Yeah, perfect. So I go into the GPA, and we see that it prints 2.5. Okay. But it hasn't changed yet. How do I change my GPA now?
You add GPA change.
So plus or equals GPA change.
Now on this one, why do we have to put the plus or equals? Like if we just put the plus sign, that would work as well, right?
So no, because if I just put the plus sign, all I'm saying is I'm adding a number plus a number, and nothing changes.
So with the plus sign, we will have to do student GP the dictionary GPA equals to, then we have to put the 2 things that we add in, but with the plus equals, we can just put 1.
Yeah, exactly. So I could say student GPA is equal to student GPA plus GPA change, right? And that would then give me 2.8. But in shorthand, because Python is trying to make it easier for us, if I just say plus equals, it's telling it, hey, I'm not just adding this number, I'm also assigning it to the original value of student GPA. And that's how we get the 2.8. Does that answer your question, Andrew?
Yes. Thank you.
Of course. Okay, awesome. So now we changed the grade and we changed the GPA. So let's look at our dictionary now and see what it looks like. So we got grade 11, which is partly what we expected, right? Grade 11, that's what we drew out as well. And we got the GPA of 2.8, which is also what we wrote. So now it's still failing, and that's because I'm not returning anything. So let's fix that real quick. And when I run it, it returns true. So let's check if it works when the GPA change is a negative number. Perfect. So both of our methods worked. We checked each one of them individually, and now we could check both of them together to see that we got true. Great. Does anyone have any questions over GPA change or current GPA? Sorry, current grade. Trying. No, this is too easy. All right, let's move on to the next one. So number of characters. Oh, is this the one you were showing me, Kim? I don't think so. All right, so number of characters. Write a function that takes in a string of lowercase characters and returns an object containing the count of each letter in the string. This is awesome.
Yeah, this is different. So,
This one's different.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. So we've been messing around with dictionaries for a while. So now, this one, do we want to draw it out again? Let's draw it out then. Okay, so we got a string, which is a set of letters. And what are the requirements asking me to do? Oh. Right, so the requirements are asking me to return a dictionary of the string. But currently, there's really no parameters or any conditions that I have to meet. It's more of the body, right? I think for this one, it might be better if we put the drawing aside. So how could I do that? How could I start a dictionary?
If there is no, if everything is lowercase, so it's just a matter of us looping the trading over each one, then counting each letter, then put it into a dictionary. So we can have an empty dictionary.
Okay. So let's call this dictionary. Let's call it dict of chars. Okay. So an empty dictionary.
So now we can iterate over str to get each. Then we can count each word and append it into the wait a minute. I'll get into a dictionary.
Yeah, how do I sign it into the dictionary as a key?
So
You guys want to look it up on Google real quick?
so
Let's see, I'm gonna print I for now, just to ensure that we have every character. So we run through it. Okay, great. So we do have every character. But now the last thing we need is just being able to actually add it into my string, right? Or into my dictionary. How could I do that?
so we have to use two indexes. So one will be for the key and one will be for the value.
Okay, so we got dict of chars I, and what is that going to be equal to?
And I think we might have to then just the string str and with the index.
Well, we don't need the index because we know we're grabbing each individual letter, right?
Yeah. Then that'll be str dot the index dot count.
Yeah. So I could grab the count of I. Let's see what the dictionary looks like. Okay, so now we got B1, D2, A3, and C1. So that's perfect. That's what we want. And I could return it and make it return true, right? Does everybody understand how this works?
Could you maybe explain it a little bit further?
Yeah, of course. So for now, let me just make this. So dict of characters doesn't have any keys currently, right? And let's print dict of characters real quick. Yeah, it doesn't have any keys. And when I go to iterate So let's print I. And let's print str dot count. Okay. All right, let's see that. Okay, awesome. So dict of characters is empty. I'm telling it, hey, go through each character inside of my string. All right. So it goes through my string. The first letter that it runs into, or character that it runs into, is the character of B. And then when I run the count function, it grabs the count of how many times this character is inside of my string. And in this case, it's just 1. So then I say dict of characters, I give it the key of B, and I make it equal to the count of how many times that character is inside of my string. And I continue doing that. So I get B1, then it goes into D. So now I is D, and the count is 2. It goes into it.
Pretty much in line 9, it's pretty much we are kind of assigning a value to the key.
Right. So
okay.
we're creating the key and giving it a value.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we see it slowly update as it keeps adding keys, right? And the good thing about it is, let's say that we had, so we have, for example, D, right? So we see that D is 2, creates the key of D, and then 2. But then D populates again down here. Notice how it didn't add it towards the end. It just said, okay, well, I'm going to go to the dict of characters at index D, or sorry, at the key of D, and then I'm just going to give it the value of 2, which is the same exact thing that it did before. It's just redoing it again because currently that string still contains that letter.
The first letter we have a B, and the second one we have a D. So in the result where we have after the first dictionary B semicolon 1, then we have D, and that's supposed to be D1, or it's already iterated and giving us the result altogether. Because I think the first time it encounters D, it should be D1 in the result. In the result on the right side, yeah.
Yeah, so here we see D2, right? And I get why you think this would be D1, but I'm not just counting one instance. I'm telling it to grab all the times that D exists inside of the string.
Okay.
And that's why it puts 2 in there. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, so right now, currently, what this is doing is we see it try to reassign multiple times the letter D. So how could I do it so that it only assigns these values one time? What can I do to str so that that's no longer a problem?
I don't understand. What do you mean?
Yeah, so let's look at that. So let's yeah, so we see that it runs B, right? And then it runs D, then A, then C, but then it runs D again. And technically I don't need it to run D twice, right? Because D has already happened. I don't need it to do this logic multiple times. I only want it to do it once. Because if my string was ridiculously long, this could hurt my time complexity, right? So how could I fix that?
Could you compare, and if it matches, pass over it?
Okay. Yeah, I could compare. What do you mean by compare? What is it that I'm checking?
That's a really good question.
Can use an if statement.
Okay, so I could do an if statement. If what?
So if str dot count I
I think I could just check the key, right? So I want to check if the key is not inside of my dictionary. So how do I check that?
it's not in the dictionary.
Not in, yeah. You
Yeah.
can just type not in.
Okay. And let's see it print the dictionary. Okay, so now we see B. B happens once. D. D happens one time. A happens one time. Runs into C. C happens once. And then when we run to the next D, we see that it doesn't print our dictionary again. And that's because when I asked it, hey, is this key not inside of the dictionary? It returned false because the key was already in the dictionary. So it avoided doing this logic all over again. Moved into A, moved in, and so on, because now it doesn't have to worry about doing the remainder of the logic. Does that make sense to everyone?
And would we want to do that just so it doesn't, just so it's not looping again?
Yeah,
Just to
so
save that?
you want to do it for the sake of the efficiency of your algorithm. Right. So as you guys move on in your careers as of working in coding, if you decide to move on with your career working in coding, the problems that you'll run into will become more and more sophisticated. So for example, in this case, I shouldn't be using count, right? Because count actually iterates through the entire list and then creates. So this is in this, instead of just doing one for loop in here, I'm actually doing multiple for loops inside of the for loop in line 7, because count iterates through my entire string every time I use it. So the correct way of doing this would be, I would ask it, hey, is I not in the dictionary? So if it's not in the dictionary, I want it to initiate at once. Else, meaning that it is in the dictionary, I want you to increment it by 1. All right, and then from there, we'll see that the print statement is still the same. So let's print dict of characters. So we see that B is 1, then we get D1, right? Because D has only appeared for the first time. It wasn't inside of the dictionary, so I initialized it as 1. Then it moves on to A, puts it to 1, moves on to C, puts it to 1. And then when it hits D again, it says, okay, well, it is inside the dictionary, so go inside the else statement, and I increment it by 1. Then it moves on to A, and it increments A by 1 and by 1 again to get us our final dictionary that we're looking for, right? And this in time complexity is only running one for loop throughout the entire array and making it the most efficient way of doing this solution. Does that make sense?
This is what I had in mind, actually.
Awesome.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Okay. Could you tell me which part you didn't understand, or just overall?
The if not in part.
Okay, the if not in part. Got it. So the if not in part is asking my dictionary, hey, does this letter, so let me, so I'm asking, hey, does B exist inside of dict of characters? I'm asking, does it not exist inside the dictionary of characters? So no, it doesn't exist inside the dictionary of characters. So I'm going to make it equal to 1, right? Goes into D, it doesn't exist, makes it equal to 1, and so on. And now we got this entire array, this entire dictionary that's holding all of my characters equal to 1. And then we get the first repetitive letter, which is D. and ask it, hey, is D not inside of the dictionary? And tells me, no, it is inside of the dictionary. This is false. And because this is false, it goes into my else statement. And in my else statement, I grab the dictionary of characters at the key of D, and I increment its value by 1, making it 2. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. All right. And then we got one more. But we have been going for a while. So before we get into this nice last exercise, let's take a 5-minute break and then come back at 8 o'clock to go over our last exercise of the day. All right, everyone. See you in 5 minutes. All right, welcome back, everyone. Let's look at our last problem for the day. So you're a new programmer at your company. Your CFO needs some data regarding all the employees. Your CFO needs to know the number of employees per job title, the average salary for that job title within the company, the average bonus that job title receives within the company, and the average total compensation for that job title. So you're given an array of dictionaries that represents all the employees in the company. You need to parse through all the employee data and return an array of dictionaries that represents each job title and the corresponding compensation data, including title, total employees, average salary, average bonus, and average total compensation. So we got our employee data, and this is what it's supposed to return. Okay. Awesome. So let's see. We got our employees, they got their titles. So it looks like we will have to write a couple of loops. Well, more like 2 loops, right? One to determine how many different titles there is. And then from there, we can work through the list. And if they have that title, then we could make all of the math happen. So first, let's grab all of the titles from each one of these employees. How do we do that?
Well, it feels kind of strange having a dictionary in a list. So even begin with.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. So it's a list, right? And a list has what? Everything inside of a list is taking up what spot?
Single spot.
Yeah, it's taking an index, right? A single spot. So I could probably still treat it as a for loop and go into that index. So let's see. Let's say for employee in employee data. Okay, now let's loop through it. So now for employee and employee data, let's print employee. Okay, and we see that it prints each dictionary, right? So now what if I just wanted the title? Instead of the entire dictionary, I just want the title. How could I make that happen here on line 90?
So now we can just have the key to the employee.
Okay, and what would be the key? Right, the title. Awesome. So now I run this. Okay, awesome. So this is great. I'm grabbing them, but I'm not storing them anywhere. What do you guys think I should store it in?
Are we trying to get an empty a list or a dictionary?
I think a list is good.
All right, so
This-
then store into an empty list.
Yeah, let's do job titles. And let's make that equal to a list. Okay. So what I want to do here, if I'm trying to put these titles in the list, how do I want to do it?
Instead of doing print, we can just do job title dot append employee title.
Okay, and then let's print job titles real quick. Okay, so that kind of worked, but we see that we have repetitive values, and I don't want that. So how do I check? How do I make sure that this only happens if the title is not inside of job titles?
Could we do an if well not in, if not employee not in, yeah.
Okay, and we want employee title, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not in job titles. And let's indent that. Okay, let's run that one more time. Okay, awesome. So now we have our three different types of data. And let's make sure we have designer, product manager, and developer. Designer, product manager, developer. Awesome. This is great. So let's make our developer dictionary first. So it looks like our developer dictionary is going to need these individual keys. So number of employees, the average salary, and the average bonus. Awesome. So how can I do this? Let's take it one step at a time, and let's go with total employees. Right, so now let's actually start constructing our result. And our result list of dictionaries should be a list, right?
Should be a list or empty dictionary.
Yeah, it should be a list of dictionaries. So let's start with making our dictionaries for each title. So let's say for title in employee, sorry, in job titles. And then let's say result list dict. What do we want to do with that? We want to add something into it, right? Because we want to throw a dictionary in there.
Not sure what we want to add to the list.
Okay. So let's just start a dictionary where the key of title would hold the title value. How do we do that?
Then the result list will be a dictionary. So we have an empty dictionary, right?
Okay, so we started as an empty dictionary. What's next?
Okay, then we can now have the key yeah, the key equals to whatever we want to make the values plus or equal. No, plus or equal.
Yeah, so in this case, we're going to make it equal to the title, right? Well, let's see what that does so far when we print job title. Okay, great. So it looks like this is the first portion of the dictionary, but now I want to add that into my result. So how could I add that?
Into which result?
The result list of dictionaries.
Oh, okay. There we can append it.
Nice. So let's say result list of dictionaries dot append. Oh, probably want to print it, don't I? Let's see. Print result list of dictionaries. Okay, so now we see that our result list of dictionaries is starting to populate, right? So now we got 3 dictionaries with the key of title. Just like the solution wants us to do. But now we need the total employees. So how do I do that?
So we can insert we still need the key and the value.
Yeah. And I also
Hmm.
want to grab how many employees there is. So I probably need to loop again, right?
Absolutely, yep.
So what should I loop through?
Total employees.
Yeah, so let's loop through all the employees, right? So for employee in list of employees. Okay, and what do I want to do now?
So now, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, we would essentially just do the same thing we just did for the title, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
So if employee, then total salary that we're looking at.
Yeah, so let's start that. Let's say, oh, sorry, let's change this up real quick. So let's do job title dict. Okay, so now we have job title dict. And it looks like this is the next key that we're going after, right?
Yeah, total employees.
Okay, and what do I want to initialize it to?
Mhm.
So in this case, I'm going to initialize it to 0, right? Because once I loop through the employees, if an employee has the same title as the one we're currently looping through, then I could increment this by 1. Right? So let's do that. So what's my if statement supposed to look like?
So if employee total employees.
Okay, so if employee title, because it doesn't have total employees, right? We could just check if they have a title. Okay. So I want to check that the title is matching what?
If it matches the what is our dictionary? Job title, Dick?
Yeah, so I want to, not the job title dictionary, but the title that I'm currently working on. All right, so let's print title. And yeah, let's do title.
Yeah.
Okay,
Title.
so if it does have the matching, then what do I want to do to total number of employees?
So we're gonna increment it
Add
by
1.
Perfect. Yeah, so I want to increment it by 1, so plus equals 1. Result list of titles. No, job title. This is dict. Okay, so let's run it through. Let's see what we got. So we see it's working through each individual title. So we did see developer, product manager, and designer. We see the title of developer, and we see that the total employees is 3. Is that what we want? Yes, it is. We see product manager, and the total employees is 2. Perfect. And then we see designer with the total employees of 2. Awesome. So now we need to figure out the average salary. But before we even go into averaging anything out, I think we should just accumulate a sum of all of the salaries. So how could we do that?
Can you please scroll back all the way to the, not to the solution, but the top?
Mhm.
Just wanna see. Okay. All right, good. So we have salaries. Oh. So we can either iterate over to get the salaries and the list, then sum it.
Yeah, so let's grab the salary and initialize it as 0, right? So that grabs the average salary and initializes it as 0. So when I run my algorithm, now it's the average salary, but it's at 0. And now that I know that it's matching my title, what do I want to do to my average salary?
Incremented by everyone's salary.
Well, I want to increment it by the employee salary, right?
Yes.
So how do I do that here?
Using the key.
Perfect. So I could grab employee and grab the salary. So right now we should see some pretty big numbers. They're not averaged yet, which is fine. So maybe at the end of this, right before it appends into the dictionary, we could turn it into an average. How do we do that? So let's go with
Divided by the count of the employees.
nice. Okay, let's see if that starts matching. So we see the first one is a 127. Oh, sorry. Yeah, 127,333. But it looks like it gets rid of all the decimal points. So what type of Python function should I use to get rid of all the decimal points here?
Round.
double.
Yeah, perfect. I could use round or I could use the double division. But let's see what round does. Let's see if that's more what we want.
Yeah.
So we got 127,333. We got 101,000. And then we got 82250. Perfect. So now we have the average salary. And now I want the average bonus, which is basically going to be the same thing. So what do I do?
Yep. Initialize the next line.
Okay. And I initialize
Average
it
bonus.
by average bonus. Okay.
Then we did pretty much the same thing, but instead of using salary, we use bonus.
Awesome. So let's do that. Okay. And let's see what that looks like for now before we do the division. So it looks like that's working, but we still need to get the average of it. So how do I get the average of it at the end here?
Divided
Right
by.
back to the place.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's do that. Let's do job title dict with the average bonus is equal to round And let's go with job title dict. Average bonus. Divided by. Job title dict. And which one is it again? Is it total employees?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Are those indented properly?
Is it indented properly?
Yeah.
Yes, it
Did-
is.
Average salary and bonus?
Yes, it is. So now let's take a look here. We see our average bonus for 7750, so great. Then we see 18750, perfect. And then we see 13000. Okay, awesome. And then we got total comp. We see AVT total comps, and I think that's supposed to say, oh no, I guess that is supposed to be the way it is.
Total compensation.
Yeah, so average total compensation.
So that
Which-
would be average salary plus average bonus.
Okay, awesome. So, do I just do that here?
Yes.
We still need to initialize it, right?
So I don't need to necessarily initialize it. I could just initialize it here with the value that I already want. So let's say I want AVT. I'm just gonna copy and paste that key to make sure that I don't misspell it. And before I do this, I want to also add my average salary. Right? So I'll add my average bonus plus my average salary. Is that all we need to do? Or is that incorrect?
Would we,
Yeah,
we want to
let's-
divide it by
let's-
the,
Yeah, let's add before we divide. Let's add and see what we get. Then if it needs to be divided, then we can.
Okay, let's check it out. So now we see 9,000. We see. I apologize if you guys could hear that. And then we see 119750. Perfect. And then we see 140,333. Awesome. So it looks like this is working correctly. Go ahead.
Why didn't we initialize it like in line 101, like we initialize average salary and average bonus? Why didn't we do
I see. So
that?
the reason why I
Um,
initialized these here is because I needed to add them while I was looping through the employees, right? So I needed to have a value that I
Okay.
could manipulate. Whereas average total compensation was not dependent on the employees. So I didn't need to be able to reference average total compensation while working through the employees. I only needed to create a final value once I had an average salary and an average bonus.
Right.
Awesome. So now let's return this value and let's see if it worked. Oh, we'll have a print statement somewhere. There you go. But we got true. We made it. Easy peasy. This one's actually one of the more complicated ones. This is probably the hardest one out of all of them.
Yeah.
there's so much to it.
Yeah. Right. You got all your nested loops, you got two separate loops going in between them, and then
Yeah,
dictionary.
got lots of loop.
Yeah, then you got your dictionary manipulation and assignment. So exciting. Awesome. Does anyone have any questions over how we came up with this solution? And this is a complicated one, so I definitely expect some questions.
We can just go over the steps again. I
Yeah.
kind of understand, but you know.
No, yeah, of course. So let's do this. So it iterates through the title, right? And let's just print here the job title dictionary. So first, we go through each employee and we grab each individual title and we ensure that there's no repetitiveness because that's what we want, right? We want dictionaries depending on the title. Okay, so let's print that first. Let's print job titles. And let me make sure that I comment this out. So we see that it picked out developer, right? It saw developer again, but then I asked it if the title is not in job titles, then you could append it. But if it is inside of job titles, it just skips it. So that's how we avoided having doubles. So then we got our 3 job titles by the end of that. So this is perfect. So let's comment this out and let's say grab all job titles belonging to employees. And then here, we just make sure they are not repetitive in the list. So we make sure that they're not in job titles before appending it. Okay. So now we iterate through our titles. So we could see that when we iterate through our titles, we'll just see developer, product manager, and designer. And for each one of these titles, we want to check all of the employees and grab all of this information. So let's print this for now. Right, so for a developer, I want to grab the title, which I already know. It's going to be a developer. I want to grab its total employees, the average salary, and the average bonus. So this is great. But I currently don't know any of that because I haven't worked with the employees now. So now I'm going to iterate through employees. And then I'm going to check if their title matches our current title. All right, so let's comment this out. And let's just print this. Let's say print where title is equal to employee title. Okay, so we see developer, right? It hits true, true, and then false, meaning that that last person wasn't a developer. And let me just comment this out so that we don't run into any issues. False, false, and false. So we know that we have 3 developers, right? So now that we know that this is true, our dictionary works through. So again, it assesses this is true. And if it is true, then we just add 1 to our employee data. So let's, at the end of this, let's print job title date. Okay, so we see developer. It's true. So we see the developer, and we see that he's at 1. We see that it hits true again. So now we're at 2, and we see that the salary is incrementing as well as the bonus because we're adding as we continue finding more employees, right? And then we see 3, and we add the average salary and the average bonus. Okay, so that's fantastic. Then we hit all these falses because they're not developers, and then we hit product manager. So for product manager, we see the false and the false. Finally, it hits the first product manager, increases it to 1. hits the second product manager, increases it to 2, and just like the developer, it increases the bonus and the salary as we're working through this dictionary. And then last, we see our designer, which most people aren't designers, but we see true towards the end. We see one designer, its original salary, and then it increments as we work through. Okay, great. So then we build our dictionary with a total sum of all the salaries of the employees with each individual job title. And that's great and all, but that's not what we wanted, right? We want to know the average. So instead, what we did was we rounded and we divided the average salary by the total number of employees. And we did the same thing with the bonus, because currently our average salary key and our average bonus key was holding a sum of all of the salaries and all of the bonuses for each job title. So to turn it into an average, we just divided it by the total number of employees. Go ahead.
So why are we outside the for loop for the for employee on 108? Why the 118 to 120, I believe? Why is it outside the for loop? Why is it not under, just like we have the from like line 112 to like 114? Why don't you continue on that line, on that indentation?
Right. So if I were to indent it, right, and let's just say we have 3 employees and each one of them had an average salary of 1, 2, and 3, right? So I add 1 plus 2 plus 3, and that's going to give me 6. And then I divide that by 3, which gives me an average of 2, right? Now, if I were to notice that I didn't get the average until after I added all of them together, right? I added 1, 2, and 3 together, and then I divided it by 3. Now, if I were to put line 118 and 119 inside of the loop, instead of grabbing all of them, I would say 1 plus 2, that's 3. Then I would divide it by 2, which would give me 1.5. And then I would add 3, which gives me 4.5, and divide it by 3, which gives me like 1 point something, right? And that's not the average. So the reasoning why this isn't looped in is because I want to make sure I grab a total sum before I go and divide it by the number of employees in order to get its true average. Does that answer your question?
Yep. Thank you.
Awesome. Of course, no problem. And then once we got our average salary and our average bonus, we needed our average total compensation. And all we needed to do was add our average bonus with our average salary. And I don't even think this round is necessary, if I'm being honest, but I'm going to leave it there just to be safe, actually. Yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there just to be safe. And now let's print this. Let's print our job title dictionary. Okay, great. So now we see developer, and we see the title of developer with 3 employees, the average salary being divided by 3 employees, the average bonus after it was divided by 3 employees, and then we got our average total compensation being a sum of our average salary and our average bonus. We appended all of these into our result list. And once we appended it into our result list, we then returned our result list. So let's see our list of dicts once it's over. So now I have a list of 3 dictionaries, 1 for each job title, developer, product manager, and designer, with each of their corresponding information. And that is how you solve the employee data algorithm. Any questions?
That was quite intense. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, no problem. I'm glad I was able to help. Yeah, this one was a good one. Had me sweating. I was like, oh, I'm gonna mess this up. Okay, great. I'm gonna stop the recording because that's all the material that we have for today. But we could definitely go over problems together. So let's stop the recording.